The first thing I noticed was that my front door was locked from the inside, but the chain was hanging loose. I remember standing there for several seconds, staring at it without moving. It was still dark outside, sometime around 4 in the morning, and the only light in the hallway came from the small lamp I had left on in the living room. I had woken up because I thought I heard footsteps downstairs. At first, I assumed it was the house settling. Old houses make noises at night. Pipes knock, wood expands and contracts, the refrigerator kicks on. After a while, you learn to ignore most of it, but these footsteps had sounded different. They had been slow, deliberate, and close enough that I could almost feel each step through the floor. I had stayed in bed for a few minutes, listening, until I heard what sounded like someone gently placing something on the kitchen counter. That was when I got up. I checked the bedroom window first. It was locked. I checked the bathroom, empty. Then I came downstairs and found the front door exactly as I had left it, locked with the deadbolt, but the chain was no longer secured. I told myself I must have forgotten to put it on. That explanation made sense. I had been tired when I came home that evening. I had probably locked the deadbolt and forgotten the chain. I went into the kitchen to get a glass of water, and that was when I noticed the chair. It was pulled away from the dining table, not far, maybe a foot or two, but I knew I hadn't left it that way. I had a habit of pushing the chairs completely under the table before going upstairs because the kitchen was small, and leaving one pulled out meant I would bump into it every time I walked through the room. I stared at it, trying to remember whether I had used it earlier. I couldn't. I was almost certain I hadn't. Still, there was nothing frightening about a chair being moved. I pushed it back under the table, drank my water, and went upstairs. I didn't sleep well after that. Every few minutes I found myself listening for another sound. Eventually exhaustion won, and I woke up late the next morning with sunlight coming through the curtains. By daylight, everything seemed ridiculous. I laughed at myself while making coffee. The chair was probably something I had forgotten. The chain had probably been an oversight. The footsteps had probably been the house. I had been living there for almost 6 months, and nothing strange had ever happened before. The house was a small rental on the edge of town, surrounded by trees and separated from the nearest neighbor by a long driveway. I had chosen it because it was cheap, quiet, and far enough away from work that I didn't have to hear traffic when I got home. At the time, the isolation had felt peaceful. That morning, it felt different. 3 days later, I noticed the kitchen cabinet. One of the upper cabinets was open. I stopped halfway through making breakfast and looked at it. The cabinet contained almost nothing except a few glasses and an old ceramic bowl I rarely used. I couldn't remember opening it. I closed it and went about my morning. Then just before leaving for work, I noticed something else. The bathroom door upstairs was open. I always slept with it closed because the hallway light from the bathroom bothered me. I was certain I had closed it the previous night. I remember doing it. I remember turning off the light, pulling the door shut, and going into my bedroom. But again, I found myself standing there trying to decide whether my memory was reliable enough to trust. Nothing was missing. Nothing appeared damaged. There were no muddy footprints, no broken windows, no signs of forced entry. There was absolutely nothing that would justify calling the police. I began to wonder if I was simply becoming forgetful. That explanation lasted about a week. During that week, small things kept changing. A kitchen drawer would be open when I came home. A bathroom towel would be hanging differently. The television remote would appear on the opposite side of the couch. Once, I found the bedroom curtains partially open even though I always closed them before leaving for work. Each time, I could invent an explanation. Maybe I had done it without thinking. Maybe I was remembering incorrectly. Maybe the wind had moved the curtains. Maybe I had left the drawer open that morning. The human brain fills in gaps when it doesn't remember something, and I knew that. I actually started blaming myself for noticing these things. I began taking pictures before leaving the house, not because I believed someone was entering. I told myself it was just a way to prove that I wasn't imagining things. Before work, I photographed the kitchen, the living room, the bathroom, and my bedroom. I took pictures of the doors and windows. I made sure everything was exactly how I wanted it. Then I left. That evening, when I returned, nothing had changed. I almost felt embarrassed. The next morning, however, one of the photographs stopped bothering me because I noticed something I hadn't seen before. In the picture of my bedroom, the closet door was completely closed. I knew that because I had specifically checked it before taking the photograph. When I woke up that morning, the closet door was open by about 6 inches. I stared at it for a long time. I walked over and opened it completely. There was nothing inside except clothes, boxes, and an old suitcase. I searched the closet twice. Then I checked the bedroom window, the hallway, and the bathroom. Everything was locked. I started sleeping with my bedroom door locked. That decision made me feel safer for about 2 nights. On the 3rd night, I woke up at 2:17 in the morning because someone whispered my name. It was so quiet that I wasn't immediately sure I had heard it. I lay completely still, staring into the darkness. The room was black except for a thin line of light beneath the bedroom door. I held my breath. Nothing happened. I waited. Then I heard it again. My name. A whisper from the other side of the door. I didn't move. For several seconds, I couldn't even breathe properly. My mind went through every possible explanation. Maybe I had dreamed it. Maybe a sound from outside had resembled my name. Maybe a television downstairs had been left on. But then the handle moved, very slowly. It turned downward. I watched it from the bed. The bedroom door was locked. The handle stopped. For a few seconds, there was complete silence. Then whoever was outside gently pushed against the door. The lock held. I didn't shout. I didn't get up. I didn't even reach for my phone. I just stared at the handle while something stood on the other side of the door. I could hear breathing, very soft breathing. Whoever it was seemed to be standing extremely close to the door. I remember thinking that if I stayed completely still, maybe they wouldn't know I was awake. That thought was irrational because they had already whispered my name. They knew I was there. After perhaps 30 seconds, the pressure against the door disappeared. The footsteps moved away. One step, then another, then silence. I stayed in bed until sunrise. When I finally unlocked the door, the hallway was empty. I checked every room. Nothing. The downstairs doors were locked. The windows were locked. There was no obvious way anyone could have entered. I called the police that morning and explained what had happened. 2 officers came by, searched the property, and checked the doors and windows. They found nothing. One of them told me that the area had occasional burglaries, but there had been no recent reports of anyone breaking into houses nearby. They suggested installing cameras and better exterior lighting. I agreed. The next afternoon, I bought 2 security cameras. I installed one above the front door and another facing the back entrance. They connected to my phone and recorded automatically whenever they detected movement. For the first few nights, nothing happened. I began to feel stupid again. Maybe the voice had been a dream. Maybe I had been half asleep. Maybe all the strange things in the house had harmless explanations. The cameras gave me a sense of control. I started sleeping better. Then one morning I received an alert at 3:11, motion detected. I opened the camera app while still lying in bed. The front porch was empty. I watched the recording. At 3:11, the camera showed the porch exactly as it looked every night. The front door was visible. The driveway disappeared into darkness beyond the frame. Nothing moved. I checked the recording again. There was a shadow. For less than a second, something passed directly in front of the camera. It was too close to identify. I rewound it, played it again. The same thing happened. Something moved across the lens, blocking the view, then disappeared. I got out of bed and checked the front door. It was locked. But when I opened the camera app again, I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. The motion alert had not come from the front camera. It had come from the camera facing the back entrance. I opened that recording. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the back door slowly opened from the inside. I watched it happen twice before I understood what I was seeing. The door wasn't being opened from outside. It was already inside the house. Something had opened it from the interior. I grabbed my keys and left. I spent the next 2 nights at a motel. During those 2 nights, I went through every possible explanation. Maybe someone had copied my key. Maybe the lock was faulty. Maybe the camera was malfunctioning. Maybe there was some hidden entrance I didn't know about. The house was old. There could have been a crawl space or a damaged section of wall. I called the landlord and demanded that he come inspect the property. He arrived the next morning with a maintenance worker. They checked the doors. They checked the windows. They checked the basement. They checked the attic. Nothing. Then the maintenance worker noticed something behind the furnace. There was a narrow wooden panel built into the wall. The panel had been painted over so many times that I had never noticed it. He pried it open. Behind it was a narrow crawl space. It ran underneath the staircase and continued behind several walls. The space was dusty, cramped, and barely large enough for an adult to crawl through. There were footprints in the dust, fresh ones. The maintenance worker stopped talking. The landlord looked at me. I looked at the footprints. They led from the opening toward the back of the house, and then they stopped directly beneath my bedroom. The police came back. This time they searched the crawl space thoroughly. They found old insulation, wiring, a few dead insects, and nothing else. There was no person hiding there. No belongings, no sleeping bag, no food. Nothing that could prove someone had been living inside the house, but one officer noticed something strange. The crawl space had another opening. It led behind the bedroom wall, not into the bedroom itself, into the space between the wall and the closet. There was enough room for someone to stand there. That discovery changed everything. I asked them to check the closet. They did. Nothing. Then one officer noticed that the wooden floor inside the closet sounded hollow in one particular spot. He removed the baseboard. Behind it was another narrow opening. I remember looking into that darkness and feeling something I still have trouble describing. It wasn't fear exactly. It was recognition. The space looked familiar. Not because I had seen it before, but because suddenly every strange thing that had happened in the house seemed to have a place to happen. The moved chair, the open cabinets, the bathroom door, the curtains, the whisper. Someone hadn't been entering my house from outside. Someone had already been inside it. The police searched the hidden passage again, but whoever had been using it was gone. There was no evidence of where they had gone. The landlord admitted that the house had been renovated decades earlier and that he had never known about the passage. I moved out that same day. I never went back alone. For several weeks, I convinced myself that the nightmare was over. I stayed with a friend while looking for another place. I changed my phone number and stopped checking the security camera recordings. Eventually, I began sleeping normally again. Then, one evening, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. There was no subject, only one photograph attached. I opened it. It was a picture of me sleeping. I was lying on my side in the bedroom of my new apartment. The photograph had clearly been taken from inside the room. I stared at it for several seconds before noticing the date. It had been taken 2 nights earlier. I called the police. They searched the apartment. They found nothing. There was no broken window, no unlocked door, and no hidden passage. The photograph was the only proof that someone had been there. I changed the locks. I installed cameras. I slept with the bedroom door locked. And for a while, nothing happened, until last night. I woke up at exactly 2:17 in the morning. I don't know what woke me. The apartment was completely silent. I reached for my phone and checked the security camera. The hallway camera showed an empty corridor. The living room camera showed an empty room. The front door was locked. Then I noticed the bedroom camera. I had installed it myself. It was positioned on the shelf across from my bed. The camera feed was live. I could see myself sleeping, except I wasn't asleep. I was awake. I was looking directly at the camera, and on the screen behind me, the bedroom door was slowly opening. I turned around. The door was still closed. I looked back at the screen. The door in the camera feed was open. Someone was standing behind me. I couldn't see their face. They were just standing there, completely still. Then the figure leaned closer to the camera and whispered my name. The screen went black. I haven't slept since. But there is one thing I still can't explain. The bedroom camera isn't connected to the internet anymore. I unplugged it 3 days ago.